Hey there, it's Jackson. I'm bringing you another client success story today. Today it's my client Christoph. Christoph is a super successful software engineer in Silicon Valley. Lives in San Francisco, works at all the high-tech companies. Christoph is actually my first ever personal training client. And since then, he's gone on to join my online coaching program, and we still work together today, many years later. During his original transformation, he lost 18 pounds, cut his body fat percentage from 17% down to 7%, and went from no pack to six pack. A truly software engineer to superhero transformation story, which is absolutely incredible, and I have images to back it up. But when I first met Christoph, he was out of shape. He had low energy. He wasn't feeling good about himself. His confidence was lacking. He was kind of going through the motions. And he was one of these guys that struggled with working out and fitness. He would get to a point where it was just unbearable, and then he would hit the gym hard, doing like a P90X program, like 5 days a week, hour and a half workouts, hardcore, super nuts. And he would go nuts about it, and he would get in pretty good shape. And he would go in this transformation where he'd be in terrible shape, and now he'd get in pretty good shape. But then he'd wear himself out. And then he needed a break. He'd take some time off, and next thing you know, a couple months later, he'd be right back in the same situation again. And he went through this same cycle, spinning his wheels for years before he met me. And it was when he met me that he decided he was going to make this change, not just for today, not just for a month, not just for the next 6 months, but for life. He was going to make a lifestyle change. And he dedicated himself to making continuous improvements every single year. Well, it's a couple years later, and he's kept his word. Again, like I said, he's part of my online coaching program, and I'm still impressed by his progress today. In this interview, we're going to get into the mindset of spinning his wheels and what it was like to go through these cycles before he ever met me of getting in shape and then coming out of shape and then getting back into shape, and what that was like, what the trigger was that made him decide that he was no longer going to do this, and why he wanted to get in shape and do it for life. We're going to talk about how fitness has improved and affected other areas of his life. As I often say, better abs equal a better life. And we're going to talk about how his six-pack transformation journey has made every other area of his life, from his work to his personal relationships and his energy and his health and just his overall well-being and his confidence, of course, how it's made all those things better. We're also going to talk about the myth of happiness and how happiness is not just a destination, and how making continuous improvements and progress is the real happiness. It's going to be a ton of mindset stuff, a lot of psychology. We're going to get deep. We're going to get emotional at times. There might even be a tear or two shed. It's going to be a great interview. I think you're going to learn a lot. This interview is going to be a lot less about the actual specific tactics and more about the mindset, the psychology involved. The psychology involved in spinning your wheels and then making that decision to change, but then also making the transformation. How you deal with success then once you get to the end destination, and then how you deal with it to make continuous improvements and make it more of a lifestyle and make it a habit for life. I really hope you enjoy this interview with my first ever personal training client, Christoph.
My name is Christoph. I'm a consultant. I own my own business. I work in technology and have for over 20 years. And I do that so that I can pay for my music habit. As you can see, I'm in my studio.
So why did you decide at some point, because tech people typically aren't people who are into fitness. Typically you don't see those two things congruent. Why did you decide to at some point make a transition to get really serious about fitness?
I had started, I think maybe a couple years before you and I had met, I had started going to a meditation guide. And in the first couple of years of that experience, I had started learning the connection between mind and body. And I realized that my body wasn't right up to what my mind was at. And so that was kind of the start of it. And then it made me realize that what you do with your body is something that is part of the human experience. And it seems like to have a greater human experience, you need to work on your body. You need to push it. You need to find its limitations. You need to work with it, just like you do any of your hobbies or any of your skill sets or your career or your relationships. It seems like a more complete human experience to figure out how your body behaves and try to get it to do, what you envision it to be.
So you started doing mindfulness, meditation, whatever you want to call it, and you're working with a coach for that. And at some point you felt like in order to up and elevate your experience as a human being in this world, you needed to get your body up to a level that was on par with where your mind is intellectually, emotionally, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's kind of like when you imagine yourself in a situation, you have to kind of visualize. I'm a very visual person, so you have to visualize your body in that situation. Does it look like your body you have right now, or does it look like something else? And for me, it always looked a little bit different. The other aspect of this is my family. My mom is not very fit. My father has been grossly overweight for a number of years, and so I kind of didn't want to fall into the trap of either of them.
What experiences did you feel like you were lacking that you either couldn't have or didn't have as a result of where your body was before that you're now having?
Less about the feedback that maybe I get from other people. Maybe someone saying that, "Oh man, you're in good shape," or "What do you do?" Occasionally, I get that, but that's less important for me. And what's more important for me is that when I walk into a room, I feel like I'm walking in with upright and confident and complete, I guess is a good way of saying it. And then that impacts all my interactions with everybody and everything in that room after that point. And I feel like when you walk in and you feel weak or incomplete, you feel out of place and uncomfortable. And a lot of, my job is going in and meeting new people that I have to have some air of confidence about. Otherwise, I don't get the job, and I can't, keep paying my rent. So it was more about a sense of feeling complete. And that goes back to that initial idea of my mind was in a certain place, my body didn't feel like it was in the same spot. And so fitness is kind of helping bring those two things closer together.
Was there a specific moment that you remember when it triggered for you that you decided, I need to get real serious about my fitness? Or was this just sort of gradual process and then one day you just decided?
I had tried a couple of other times to get into fitness, but I never had a role model or a motivation to kind of keep me into it. And so I would do it for a little bit and get out of it. I remember when I was 23, I was like, that's it. I'm going to go get a trainer. And I got a trainer, and I'd work for like 3 months at it. And then I'd make some progress, and then somehow I would get out of the habit. And then 5 years later, I would kind of do the same thing again. And then, 10 years later, I did the same thing. And then 15 years later, I did the same thing. So I kind of seem to have these cycles. And I think I was 37. And I said, oh, you know what? What if I were to not try to just get in the best shape of my life? What if I were to just try and be, for the next 10 years, be in better shape than the previous year? And so that's when I started looking at P90X. The problem with that program was that, it's a 90-day program. It's a 3-month thing, which fit really in my typical cycle of working and then getting out of it. And so I would do P90X for 3 months. I'd be like, all right, I'm done, I'm there. And then I would go back to doing what I was doing before. And then 6 months later, I'd be like, oh shit, now I got to go back and do it again. So I also wanted to, if I was going to really achieve this year over year constant improvement, I needed to find other external sources of motivation. And just like I went and found a guide for meditation. It's like, why not find an expert for fitness and use that to, keep me inspired so I can achieve this year over year goal.
That's so interesting. I get that from a lot of my other clients, this concept of spinning your wheels, either in the short term or even in the long term, where you're making progress, you get to a certain level, and then you fall back off. And then when you look at it over a span of 5 or 10 years, you're no better off than you were 5 or 10 years ago, even though you've had these ups and downs in between. What do you think caused you to get to a point where you decided to just shut it off? Like, why did you just stop at certain points? Was there external factors? Was it just you felt good enough and then you felt like you didn't need to do anything anymore? Like, I'm just trying to understand your mindset of like doing all this work, getting to a certain point and then stopping and then completely regressing.
It's a constant thing. I think the mental challenge to fitness is the consistency. You do this program, and P90X is actually a pretty intense program. And so you're kind of committed to doing this thing for an hour and a half, 5 days a week, and then this goofy yoga series on the weekends. But that's like all of a sudden a big time commitment. When you start at zero and you go into that, people can do it for a while, but then they break down. You just feel like you got to a point and you're done, and you just need a break from it. And so it's about finding how to be really effective in the time that you do commit.
So you think it was just, you put in so much effort and it was just going from almost 0 to 60 and trying to sustain that, and you just couldn't sustain it for longer than a very short period of time, and then you kind of needed that break, and then you'd fall off, and then it was ramp it back up to 120 again, as opposed to finding something that was a little bit more moderate, that is more of a lifestyle that you could sustain?
Right. Yeah, I think that's it. I think people look at the cover, and Tony Horton is like, this is obviously his lifestyle. This is what he does, but not everybody wants to change their lifestyle to be that only thing that they do, and it's a pretty big change if you're starting from zero.
Absolutely. So how do you think, or like, how did you feel about those struggles when you were kind of going through them? And then what made you shift and decide to say, you know what, I'm no longer going to do that struggle thing. I'm going to find something that's more sustainable. Like, what caused you to do that? Because that's a dramatic shift from, I'm going through these up and down cycles, 0 to 100, to now I'm going to sustain continuous progress over the course of 5-10 years.
I think it aligns with another part of just where I was in life, and realizing that I'm not always the expert. You can keep trying to do something thinking you know how to do it, or the experimentation is fun, or you need to do all the experimentation to figure out what really works. Or you can be like, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I'm just going to find someone that I trust that does have the answers, and throw money at the problem. Quit trying to solve it myself, and just kind of throw money at the problem, and then worry about the commitment to that, rather than trying to figure out everything on my own.
Was it hard to give up control and make that decision and do it? When we started working together, it didn't seem that way, to me at least. But internally, did you struggle with that decision to, now I'm going to give over control to somebody else and put faith and money behind this?
No, because once I had made that decision, it was like, that's the decision to make. I think what I was trying to get at is that there were parallels in other parts of my life where, life was telling me that, you know what, you don't always, like, you need to kind of drop the ego, give up a little bit of control, so you can start learning again. And I think this was the most literal embodiment of that.
Let's fast forward then a little bit. So after we started working together, as you're kind of going through that process, where's kind of your mind at with the process? Because going from where you were at, high body fat, physique obviously not on point, to your transformation where it was like that super software engineer to superhero transformation, where you had body fat in the single digits and everything. What was your mindset, and what was the struggle like going through that?
Since I'm a visual person, I had decided that there was a goal. There's the year-over-year goal, but there was the first milestone of that was a Halloween costume. Again, because I'm a visual person, it helps for me to kind of visualize what I want to look like, or have a visual target to reach for. And that's in a lot of things. When I write code, it's the same way. When I do music, there's a visual target, even though it's audio, but in my mind, there's a visual target. So I had to come up with that thing. And then I could feel the progress on a daily basis getting me closer to that. There were some setbacks too. But as long as I had that mental image in my head, then I could always kind of be relating myself to that. And then I could see the progress, even small, that was getting me closer to that. That makes sense? Does that kind of answer it? Or
why did you want to get to such an elite level of fitness, right? I mean, our goal when we were working together was 6-pack abs and look like Hugh Jackman from Wolverine. I mean, that's a lofty level goal. So you went from like where you were at, which was nowhere near that, to I want the elite.
Oh, I know, ridiculous, right? I mean, here I am. I'm going to be like, yeah, let's pick a guy that is 7 inches taller than me and 50 pounds heavier than me. Yeah, that's a good goal. I don't know. I guess in some ways, the kid in me always liked the character, and I enjoyed the movies. Plus, I had the right facial hair for it. I don't know. I guess something about the character was compelling enough that I wanted to use that as the inspiration. I mean, when I think about software engineers, like there's no software engineer ever in the world that I want to look like, because I already looked like them. I don't know. You reach for things. You want to step out of your comfort zone. If you're not reaching, then what are you doing?
That's a good point. So as you approached that goal, and eventually we got to the point where, I mean, we took the photos, and I mean, you looked as close as anyone could look to that. I mean, you had the abs, you had the muscles, you had everything going. You even had the facial hair at the end. What was it like to go through all that work, all that sacrifice, that whole year and a half, and finally get to that point? What did it feel like?
This is the time when my German heritage will come out. I got there, I took the photos, mostly happy with the photos, but there's, oh, this isn't quite good enough, and there's this other thing that's not quite good enough, and there's this other thing over here. So I admit I am not good at feeling like I've achieved something and congratulating myself for that. I can look back at those photos now, and I'm actually pretty proud of them, and I've kind of forgotten all the things that weren't right at that time. But you know, the German culture is that if you give somebody a compliment, they won't say thank you for it. They'll be like, well, but I need to fix this, and this isn't right, and I still have this to do, and then got these other things in it. And so, you know, there's a positive and a minus to that. There's always the drive to keep working on it and keep improving on the things that you're still not satisfied with. But yeah, I didn't do a great job of, you know, being thankful and congratulatory to myself. Personal thing. That's something I struggle with in all the things that I do.
I think it's very common amongst high performers, and obviously with your career, you're an extremely high performer. You're one of the best engineers in a highly competitive market in, you know, Silicon Valley, San Francisco. And a common thing I see amongst all the high achieving clients that I work with is this feeling that even though that they're so elite and they're above so many other people and they're outside the norms, that they always feel like they're not good enough, or they need to improve more, or they need to work harder. In fact, in the book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, it's a great book, but he talks about it. He says the people who are like the highest achievers, who achieve the most extraordinary things in life, often it comes from a place of not feeling worthy or not feeling good enough, and constantly focusing on just improving. And then all of a sudden they get great at it, but even when they're great, they feel like they're not great. You achieved this amazing goal, and so what were, if any, like the benefits of that goal then? So even though you didn't maybe have the gratitude of this is so amazing, like what was the positive benefits of going through that struggle then?
I'll answer that, but I want to just wrap up on the last thing. The one thing that I did learn from my meditation guide was a mantra that I've since started to incorporate every time something goes right, or you do achieve something. And that is, when that event happens, you repeat to yourself, I like this, I want more of this. And that little mantra has helped me become much more appreciative when I do accomplish something, and at least temporarily set aside all right, but you still have this work to do and this other work to do. So I did learn something over the years, but I wanted to share that with everybody. If they do have kind of the same feelings, they don't feel like they finished something, this is one way to actually give yourself a little gratitude and a little pat on the back. Okay, so back to your question, which was, what were the positive outcomes? Well, certainly I walked into a room and I felt more complete, even though the symbol of being complete was me dressed up as a superhero, superhero costume, running around that night in the costume and having people react to it. Like that was a sense of completeness. Like here was something I wanted to look like, because it was in better alignment with the way my mind thought I looked like, and then actually having that physical experience of walking in and feeling complete and then having people react. Like, so that was nice. You know, you wake up in the morning and you walk past the mirror and you're kind of like, all right, that's pretty good. So, you know, again, that's the sense of completeness. The other thing I've noticed too, and this goes back to my career, because I've been in the industry as long as I have, nowadays I work with a lot of people that are, you know, 10 years my junior or 15 years, and in some cases 20 years my junior. And I need to make sure that I don't appear, for lack of a better word, old. And in most cases, people grossly misestimate my age. And that's actually pretty valuable, because I need to come into an environment, gain respect immediately of people that are a lot younger than me, but also not have them dismiss me because I appear old. So it's been a big benefit for my career that, you know, being in good shape and actually being in better shape in a lot of ways than some of the younger people that I work with, has helped me still be able to kind of integrate in those environments, as opposed to, you know, you hear some of the older engineers and, you know, the gray neck beard, and they're like, you know, they get passed over in a job because people think they're too old, or now it's called overqualified in HR terms. So personal impact and then also career impact from, you know, accomplishing this, for sure.
That's interesting, because one of the things that I so often hear from my clients, and one of the things I try to really preach to anybody out there who's willing to listen to me, is this idea that it's not just about getting a six pack or getting the perfect body or the perfect physique, that it's so much more than this, and it has all these other ancillary benefits, and it bleeds into all of the areas of your life. One of my other clients, Tyler, he once said in an interview, he said, having six-pack abs is not about the abs at all. He said, I love when I go out and yes, I can take my shirt off and feel confident and people react to it. He's like, that's cool. That's great. That does have a good short-term feeling. He goes, but the real benefit is, he's like, I feel like I just have this extra edge, almost like I'm on fire. And that bleeds into all areas of life, confidence at work and his personal relationships. Did you feel, I mean, it sounds like you felt a similar way to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and one of the physical feelings that I really enjoy is like I get out of the gym, or maybe it's the day after, or actually sometimes 2 days after, I tend to be the most sore on the second day. And you're walking around and you're sore, but it's a good kind of sore. Like it's an accomplishment kind of sore. Like I finished something, I did something, I can tell I did something. That sense of accomplishment when you roll into the next thing where it's kind of it's a gray area, you're not sure what's going to happen or who you're going to be dealing with or what the situation is going to be. At least you have the confidence that, yes, I did something, I can feel it. That means I can do something else. I can take on something else. I'm ready for the next thing.
And how do you think that sense of accomplishment that you get continuously in the gym has affected, let's say, your work, your personal relationships, other areas of your life?
Become one of the cornerstones that I always feel that like I'm making progress and I'm not getting depressed. So let me clarify that a little bit. So I have a career that I've worked hard at for, you know, developing for 20 years. Going into a client, helping them succeed, like that gives me a sense of reward. I have music that I've been making music since I was 6 years old. So when I finish something or I make some progress in the studio, that's a sense of accomplishment. And then fitness, when I I hit a new PR or I get a really good burn or I'm sore and 2 days later, that's a sense of accomplishment. Or if I see myself and take a good picture, I'm like, oh, those abs look good. That's a sense of accomplishment. So I think it's hard to have one thing that is constantly giving you a sense of accomplishment. Like if I only had one thing in my life and things ebb and flow, success ebb and flows. You have success and you have failures and you have to go back and rethink it and try again and things like that. And it's always kind of this up and down. But if you're working on three things at the same time, there's a really good chance that there's always something hitting all the time. So, if fitness is an enabling thing for me to improve my career, and if being in the studio is something that makes me happy, that can also improve my career, but also can make me feel more inspired for fitness, all this kind of stuff working at the same time helps keep me out of a depression where I don't feel like I'm making any progress, or I don't feel like things aren't working or something along those lines. So it's a cornerstone to always kind of feeling like you're making progress and you're getting somewhere, and you're having some sense of satisfaction. Now, there is the very occasional time where all three of those things hit bottom out at the same time. And then I'm in a funk and I'm like, oh shit, okay, how do I get out? How do I get out of this funk? But for the most part, having those things kind of always constantly going, like they overlap and they bump, and it's just, there's always a sense of movement and progression.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because all the books I've ever read on happiness and all the people I've ever listened to that talk about it always stress that happiness is not a destination as much as we tend to tell ourselves it is. Like, when I make this much money, or I get this house or this car, or I get this promotion, I get this physique, I'm going to be happy. And that just never happens. It's kind of going back to what you said, when you got the physique and you finally got this body, this goal, it wasn't like this grandiose, oh my God, now I'm happy forever moment. It was like just another milestone. And then after that, you decided to build muscle. Then you went on another journey, another milestone, more improvements. Happiness comes from making continuous progress, not from arriving at some special destination or hitting some goal. Because if you arrive at a goal, once you get there and you don't move it forward anymore, now you're stagnant. Now you're unhappy very quickly again. So I think it's kind of interesting what you're saying is basically what I've always read about happiness, which is that continuous improvement in areas of your life that's going to make you feel the most happy, the most fulfilled, the most satisfied, as opposed to being stagnant and not moving forward.
Totally. And the mantra that I use a lot in everything is progress, not perfection. I don't want perfection. If you say you've perfected something or you're a master of something, you're saying that you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to improve. And so I always, like, and it comes when I have staff or when I'm working with people or I'm in the gym, I'm like, just progress, not perfection. Just progress, not perfection. And I subscribe a lot to somebody like Jerry Seinfeld, which he talks about having lots of different things to do at the time, and you always find a little bit of time to do something. So you're always kind of getting somewhere. And I think, people are afraid of, well, I don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. I want to be really great at this one thing. And it's, yeah, you can be really great at this one thing too, but your brain and your mind and your body needs some time to do other things, so that, one, you appreciate the things that you do really well when you get back to it, but that you're constantly kind of expanding your horizons and you are embracing this human experience of all these different aspects of life, relationships and career and fitness and spirituality and all these different things. And so where you get that satisfaction from is up to you. But the point is to keep doing lots of different things a little bit at a time and keep getting that sense of satisfaction and accomplishment out of it all.
As somebody who's as busy and as professionally accomplished as you, a lot of people would say, I don't have time for fitness. I just can't fit into my schedule. I'm too busy with work. I have other things. I have family. How did you manage to make it a priority, and how did you manage to integrate it into your life like you have?
Well, you gave the answer right there. You have to make it a priority. It doesn't have to be the priority, but you have to make it a priority. There is a certain amount of time commitment you have to give it, but rather than making the mistake of do more, in a lot of ways, more is less. You can be smarter about how you work out. You can be smarter about when you work out. Figure out, are you a morning person? All right, get up 30 minutes early and just squeeze it in the morning. Maybe you show up to work a little bit later, but at least you got it done and it's out of the way. Or everybody takes a 1 hour lunch break. Okay, why don't you go to the gym during your lunch break and then eat for the 15 minutes on the way back from the gym? So I'm speaking from my experience and my perspective, but I was able to find times that were either not that essential in the grand scheme of things that I could put working out in instead. And then, by working with someone that had the knowledge that I did not, I was able to make sure the time I was spending was optimized, was really more valuable than, an hour and a half jogging on a treadmill, which I despise. I hate treadmills, but some people do that and they're like, I don't get it. I'm not making any progress. I jog on this thing for an hour and a half a day. Why am I not getting anywhere? So it's about making the time commitment, but then also making sure that the time you are spending on it is as optimized as possible, so you're getting the most benefit out of it. And then it has value add. You're spending so much time, you're not getting a value add out of it, you're going to drop it. You're not going to want to do it anymore. But if you're spending a little bit of time and you've set that aside, but it's really positive and you're getting value out of it, you're going to stick with it.
So one of the areas that people really struggle to master is nutrition, and you've been pretty great at doing that. Somehow or another, you always be able to hit your numbers, to do whatever it takes. Like, how have you been able to master the nutritional side of fitness?
Going back to something I said earlier, I have not mastered the nutrition side of it. I have found things that work. And that's mostly because I started writing a lot of things down. You know, the idea of people looking strictly at a calorie count in a day, but what do you know about the food that you're putting in there? How many people have actually figured out the calories that are in the things that they're eating? And this goes before you even start getting into more complex things like intermittent fasting and stuff like that. But and the thermodynamic law of how many calories you use in a day versus how many you ingest still applies. There are genetic differences between people that will, you know, change their reaction to that, but that basic math still applies. So if you want to be losing some body fat, you have to put yourself a little bit at a calorie deficit, which means you need to know how many calories you're eating in a day. So it started a lot by going to MyFitnessPal and using kind of the food tracker stuff. That's too tedious, and in general, that works well for processed packaged foods. But since I don't eat a lot of those things, I ended up having to make my own spreadsheet of the things I most commonly eat. And by, you know, putting all those down, and actually it's just like, you know, when you take notes, you should write down the notes. So the act of writing it down helps you kind of capture it and retain it. So I just started putting in the things that I typically eat. And then that was the first step. And then the next step was, all right, well, what do I eat in a day? And so I started using that to help decide what I would eat in a day. And then that would give me a sense of like actually what the calories were I was consuming in a day. And then from there, I could tweak it to, all right, well, here's my target. What do I need to eat to meet that target? And since it was from a selection of things that I typically ate anyway, or things that I enjoyed eating, then that made it really natural to kind of be able to get close to those numbers. And then we started getting into actual, you know, not just calories, but then specific macros. And since my spreadsheet had contained all those things, it was easy to start adjusting based on those particular aspects instead of just calories. So a lot of it came from just the practice of documenting it. That was really the most important part.
That sounds like a very intentional, scientific, and I mean almost engineering approach to this.
Oh yeah, almost like an engineer, huh? Imagine that.
Which obviously fits in perfect. You assessed it and took it apart just like a work problem, which I think is something that people often overlook or just simply don't do, right? They have this kind of idea in their head of generally where they want to be with their fitness, and they generally think, oh, I need to eat healthy, but then they never really take the time to sit down to analyze the problem properly like they would at work for anything, to write some things down, to do some basic tracking. They don't do any of that stuff, and then they expect to get a result somehow, which seems kind of crazy and absurd when you're on the outside of it. When if you took them and put them in a work context and asked them to solve a problem, they'd be like, well, let's sit down, let's diagnose it out, and let's tease out what we need to do.
If you have somebody that has an interest in this, and then you give them all of the information, and all they have to do is follow along with the information. Sometimes that doesn't really stick because they didn't have enough of the experimentation to understand why they would end up at this result. And I think for some fitness programs and diet plans, people are like, I need help on this. And the person gives you the final solution. And that's probably something that works for the majority of people. But if they don't subscribe to it or understand why they would have gotten to that solution, they're not going to stick with it. And in this case, by iterating on it a bunch of times, get an understanding of what worked and what doesn't work. And I think like the final cookie cutter Weight Watchers, here's your plan sort of thing, robs people of that experience for them to really understand how it works. Now, to be fair, not everybody wants to know that in detail. My nature is that I tend to want to deconstruct everything so I can reconstruct it later for myself. Not everybody has that personality. So I think someone would still need to commit to that kind of research and if we could convince them that you're doing it to optimize this for yourself, like this is really for your benefit. This is not homework that someone's just randomly giving you. This is the way for you to take valuable information and then optimize it for yourself. And if you can commit to that, then that helps you stick with it and get better results, I think.
Yeah, I think the big difference is that, like you said earlier, that you're not a fitness expert and you didn't want to be a fitness expert. You wanted to kind of offshore it to somebody else to do. But even in giving me the responsibility of creating the diet and the nutrition plan or the macros or whatever, and giving them to you, you still have to execute on it. And if you're going to execute on it, you might as well have a sense of self-awareness about it so you can learn while you're executing. Yeah. Which is kind of what's happened over the years, is that your knowledge has slowly increased over time to where now you could probably coach somebody who's starting from zero, and you probably yourself could coach them on nutrition or coach them on exercise and get them to a certain point, right? Because your knowledge has increased by being self-aware through those steps and by recognizing how your body's responding, by understanding kind of generally why I'm prescribing things. You're still not responsible for going and doing all the hard work of creating everything and having that expertise, but your knowledge is obviously vastly increased. And that's the difference between just getting a temporary result and like getting results for life, right?
I agree. Yeah. And that reminds me of an incident where you and I and your girlfriend were out together, and in the middle of a conversation, she's like, wow, good job, Christoph, your bicep is coming in well. And then she turns to you and says, Jackson, good job. And you're like, don't look at me. He did the work. I just gave him the framework for him to work in, but he did the actual work. He put in the effort. It's his accomplishment. And so I think that's spot on. The self-awareness, the learning, the retention, the iteration, the practice. The best you can do is set up the milestones and the goalposts, but the person has to do the running. They have to carry the ball.
Secretly, after we left that dinner, I said, I actually did all the work. He didn't do anything.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
All right, just a couple more questions because I want to be respectful of your time, and we've already talked for a while. If there's somebody out there who's listening to this or watching this and they're thinking to themselves, well, this guy did it, but I can't do it. Not me. He has the right genetics, or he's special, or he has whatever, he has extra time. Like, what would you say to somebody who's sitting out there who's thinking, he did it, but I can't do it, who maybe is doubting themselves and doesn't and wants to make that step, but just is like, they're hesitating.
If someone thinks I'm in great shape, that's fine. If someone wants to look like me, that's fine. It's never going to quite turn out like that because our bodies are different. But that's why, I realized, Hugh Jackson is, like I said, he was 50 pounds heavier and 7 inches taller than me. There's no way I could ever look exactly like him. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to shoot for something that would allow me to change. And by changing, I'd get closer to what I wanted to be. And it's like, as a musician, if I hear a song, I can probably try really hard to reproduce the song, but I'm not going to get it exactly right. It's someone else's song. It's their it. And I can try to do something like it, but it'll be different and it'll be my kind of it. So, even if you want to look like somebody, it's not going to quite turn out that same way. And that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. It will be your own unique take on it, and it'll become your it. And you can do it because it's unique to you.
Last question. If there's anybody out there who is considering working with me, who's interested in my coaching program, what would you say to that person?
I would say that Jackson has a terrible sense of humor, so if you do work with him, be prepared for bad jokes. Also, a lot of Dave Matthews stories. So I hope you like Dave Matthews. I would say Jackson is your resource. He is the person that's going to give you the pieces of information that will help you be successful. He will be there for you when you need some encouragement and to be reminded about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And he will expect that you do, you'll do the work.
Can't argue with that. I definitely have high expectations, but I believe it's my high expectations of people that allow them to become more than they ever thought they could be.
I agree.
I mean, you're living proof of this, right?
That's right.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to do this. I can't thank you enough again. I've said so many times to people in the past that I just feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world because of what I get to do for a living. And not just what I get to do, but also the people I get to interact with, like yourself, who are some of the best, most high performing, awesome individuals that I've ever met. And I'm really proud to not just say that you're one of my most successful clients, but you're also one of my best friends. So thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to help out any way I can.
A big, huge thank you to Christoph for doing this interview with me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Again, I'm so blessed to work with such amazing people, and he is no exception. He is definitely one of my absolute best and most favorite clients, and I'm so proud and thankful to call him a friend today. So thank you again to Christoph, but I'm curious, what are your takeaways from this interview? What did you learn that you could apply today, tomorrow, this week in order to improve your life, in order to help kickstart and get you over the hill to that next level, that elite level of fitness that you want to get to, whether it's getting six-pack abs or building muscle? I would love to hear what your takeaway is and then what you're going to do, the action you're going to take to actually make a difference in your life. So please share that in the comments below or send me a message on social media or even send me an email. I would love to hear what your takeaway is and again, what you're gonna do to make a difference in your life. Here are a couple of takeaways I had from the interview. The first is about in order to experience a full, abundant, an amazing life, you have to have not only your mind and your spirit at a certain level, but you also have to have your body there as well. So he talked about how he did a lot of mindset coaching, meditation stuff. Of course, he's very intellectual. He's highly educated, and he's very challenged at his job mentally. But in order to experience a much more abundant life, he needed to get his body to that next level as well. So I think it's a really good reminder of how all these things work together and how if you want to experience the most out of life, if you want to get the most out of life, if you're a maximizer and you're thinking, I want to get every ounce of awesomeness out of this life, you need to not only get your mind there, but you need to get your spirit there and you need to get your body there as well. So that was my first huge takeaway. My next biggest takeaway is that success and happiness is not an end destination. It's actually making continuous progress. It's getting momentum and it's really challenging yourself continuously throughout life and always building on the things you've done previously. And once you get to that point and you are better, now you could take on bigger challenges, bigger goals, bigger obstacles, and that's where life gets really interesting. That's where life gets fun, and that's where the happiness comes from. So happiness, success, not an end destination. It's about always making that continuous improvement in your life, always getting better and constantly challenging yourself because that's where all the fun is. My next takeaway was about a beginner's mindset. If you notice in the interview, I said something about him sort of mastering nutrition. And he said, no, I haven't mastered it yet. I've just found some things that work for me and da 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 da. And he was very humble about it. So I think this idea of like always feeling like you're a beginner, always feeling like you have something more to learn, something more you can get from fitness, from nutrition, from your career, from personal relationships, whatever. Like I said in the last thing, success is not an end destination. So you got to have that beginner's mindset that you're always learning, that you're always able to improve. That's what's going to keep you engaged and interested in anything you're doing. Like even with fitness with me, I haven't figured out everything. I don't know everything there is to know about fitness still. Even to this day, I'm still learning, I'm still getting better, and I'm still improving myself and my own body. It's a constant thing, and it's probably never gonna end, and that's awesome. And that's what life is all about. It's about those never-ending challenges that are fun, that are interesting, and that keep you really engaged and obviously just excited about life. My final takeaway is the importance of hiring a coach or a mentor or getting somebody in front of you that knows more about a topic than you do that can help you learn, help you progress, help you grow, and that challenges you. Christoph, he's come so far that if he wanted, he could probably do this health and fitness thing on his own. He could probably create his own workouts, his nutrition plan. Like he knows enough, he's learned enough because we've worked together for so long. But he still keeps me around. He still pays me and keeps me around because I not only challenge him to always strive and get better, but I take a significant workload off of him. I create the workouts, I create the diet, And I allow him to free himself up from that so he can focus on his work, so he can focus on his music and the things that really light him on fire more. Even though he knows a great deal about fitness, it's not where his passion lies. It's not the thing that lights him up, that just he loves to dig into and create workouts and stuff. That's not what he does. He wants to focus on his music. He wants to focus on software engineering. So I allow him to do that. And then I allow him to really take out the enjoyment of the fitness, which is executing on the workouts, which is getting the results with his body, challenging himself, and doing all the fun stuff. So I handle all the dirty work, he handles all the fun stuff, and it's a great relationship. And I have coaches in many areas of my life too. I have a business coach. I've had personal trainers and other fitness coaches from time to time that create workouts for me or come up with diet plans. So I, like anyone else, practice what I preach. I don't just say hire a coach because I am a coach. I have coaches in many areas of my life. And I think you need to have coaches in areas of your life that you want to take to the next level as well. You can certainly get a lot of success through just reading books, through doing study on your own, through whatever. On your own, you can get a certain level of success. But if you want to get to that next elite level, if you want to take it to the next level, if you want to get the six-pack abs, if you want to get the awesome physique, at some point you're going to have to look to somebody else who knows more than you, that can help you, that can challenge you, that can inspire you to get to that next level and hold you accountable sometimes. So whether it's me or somebody else, or it's a business coach, or even something other than fitness, I encourage you and I would really urge you to find coaches, find mentors that can inspire you, that can help you, and they're going to help you get to that next level in your life, whether it's in your fitness, in your business, or maybe even your personal relationships. So those are my takeaways. I would love to hear yours. Again, message in the comments below, send me a message, send me an email. I would love to hear from you. I'm Jackson, and I'll see you later.